Have you ever found yourself replaying a man's actions over and over, trying to decode what he really meant? Maybe he was loving one week and distant the next. Maybe he said he wasn't ready but still acted like he didn't want to lose you. Maybe he kept you close but never close enough. And in those moments you wondered, is it me? Am I doing something wrong? If that sounds familiar, I want you to pause. Because what you're about to learn will shift the way you see men forever. Here's the truth. Most women never get told men are not complicated, just misunderstood. What feels like mixed signals, emotional confusion, or inconsistency rarely has anything to do with your worth. It has everything to do with how men are wired psychologically, and once you understand that wiring, everything clicks into place. Imagine interacting with men and feeling calm instead of anxious, confident instead of confused. Imagine never questioning whether you're good enough for him, because you finally understand what his behavior actually means. And most importantly, imagine no longer chasing love, approval, or clarity, because you're operating from a place of power, self-respect, and emotional intelligence. In this video, I'm going to pull back the curtain on how men think, emotionally, romantically, and psychologically. Not the social media cliches, not the overused dating cliches, but the real mental patterns men follow, often without even realizing it. Once you understand these patterns, something incredible happens. You stop trying to force connection. You stop overgiving. You stop trying to prove your value. Because you finally see that the right man naturally steps forward when you understand the psychological space he operates from. So stay with me, because what I'm about to share doesn't just change how you see men, it changes how you see yourself. Most women go their entire lives without ever realizing the core psychological truth that shapes almost every man's behavior in love, commitment, and emotional expression. And it's this: men respond to emotional pressure differently than women do. While women often move toward connection when they feel uncertain, men tend to move away until they can re-establish their internal sense of control, stability, and clarity. This doesn't mean they don't care. It doesn't mean they're confused. It means they're trying to regulate themselves in the only way they know how. When a man feels emotional pressure, expectations, intensity, or even unspoken needs, his instinct is often to retreat. Not because he doesn't want the woman, but because he suddenly becomes aware of how much she impacts him. That influence can feel powerful and a little overwhelming. Most women interpret this as rejection. They feel the shift, panic internally, and respond by chasing, over-communicating, or trying to fix the tension. But here's the twist. The more she tries to close the gap, the more his mind tells him he needs space to breathe. This dynamic creates a cycle almost every woman has experienced. He steps back, she steps forward, he steps back even more, until the relationship feels imbalanced and emotionally exhausting. But when you understand this core truth, you stop taking his distance personally. You start seeing it as a psychological reset, not a sign that you're doing something wrong. What men crave, though they rarely articulate it, is emotional safety. Safety to lead, to pursue, to choose. Safety to feel without feeling forced. Safety to return at their own pace, without punishment or pressure. When a woman stops chasing and instead leans into her own calm, grounded energy, something powerful happens. He senses the lack of pressure. He feels capable again. He re-engages naturally. This is the truth most women miss. Men don't fall in love because they're chased. They fall in love because they have space to come toward you. Understanding this shifts you from anxious reaction to effortless magnetism, because you're no longer trying to force connection. You're allowing it. When a man pulls away even though he clearly likes you, it feels contradictory, confusing, and sometimes even personal. But what's happening inside him is far more layered than it looks on the surface. Men don't withdraw because their feelings disappear. They withdraw because their feelings intensify. When the emotional connection starts to deepen, it triggers a psychological shift many men aren't consciously prepared for. Suddenly he realizes that this woman matters, her opinion, her presence, her expectations, and that level of emotional significance can activate a kind of internal alarm he can't quite explain. For many men, affection creates vulnerability, and vulnerability creates awareness. Awareness of what the relationship could become, what he could lose, and what might be expected of him moving forward. And since men are conditioned to stay in control of their emotions, their decisions, their pace, this awareness can feel like pressure, even if the woman hasn't done anything wrong. The pressure isn't coming from her, it's coming from himself. So instead of leaning in, he instinctively pulls back to recalibrate. He needs space not to detach from her, but to reconnect with himself. It's a reset, not a rejection. Most women misread this moment and assume they need to close the gap, but that only intensifies the internal pressure he's trying to relieve. When she starts over-explaining, questioning, or reassuring, he doesn't hear love, he hears urgency, he hears expectations. And because he's already feeling overwhelmed, it pushes him further into retreat mode. What he actually needs during this phase is the opposite of what most women give: quiet emotional room. Men return to the person who feels safe, not because she demands closeness, but because she holds her own center when he drifts. He pulls away to find clarity, but he comes back when he senses she hasn't collapsed in his absence. The powerful truth is this: a man pulling away often means he's feeling more than he knows how to process. If he didn't care, he wouldn't need space. Distance is his way of reorganizing his emotions so he can show up again with certainty instead of confusion. And when a woman understands that, she stops fearing the space and starts letting him come back on his own terms. Feminine energy is often misunderstood as softness, passivity, or waiting around for a man to act. But in reality, it has little to do with behavior and everything to do with energetic presence. When a woman is rooted in her feminine energy, she carries a calm confidence, an emotional openness, and a self-assuredness that invites a man to step forward. This energy isn't loud, demanding, or performative. It's the quiet, powerful magnetism that flips a man's internal attraction switch without her having to chase, convince, or compete. What makes feminine energy so compelling is that it shifts a man from analyzing you to feeling you. Men fall in love not through logic, but through the emotional experience a woman creates within them. When you're grounded, really grounded in who you are, you give off a sense of emotional safety and inner stability that draws him closer almost automatically. He feels welcomed by your ease rather than overwhelmed by pressure. He feels invited instead of obligated. And because of this, he wants to invest more, open more, and pursue more. Here's the part few people understand. Masculine energy naturally rises in the presence of feminine energy. When a woman stops trying to control the outcome, stops trying to manage the connection, and stops leading with fear or scarcity, she creates the emotional space a man needs to step into his masculine side. He feels called to protect, to pursue, to offer, to show up, because her energy signals that she doesn't need to chase. She allows, she receives, she holds her own center. The attraction switch flips when your energy says, I value myself, I'm open, but not desperate. I'm available, but not dependent. Men aren't drawn to perfection, they're drawn to the emotional state they experience around you. If you're anxious, he feels tension. If you're grounded, he feels clarity. If you're confident without trying to prove it, he feels inspired to deepen the connection. Feminine energy makes attraction effortless because it removes resistance. It allows a man to step into his role willingly, not because you push him, but because he wants to. And that is exactly what builds real, lasting desire. The pursuit principle is one of the most powerful, yet least understood, psychological patterns in how men bond. Contrary to the belief that men lose interest when they have to put in effort, the truth is the opposite. A man becomes emotionally attached through his own investment, not through what a woman gives him. When a man pursues, he isn't just moving toward the woman, he's building an internal sense of value around the connection. His effort creates meaning. His consistency builds attachment. His initiative strengthens the emotional link he feels. Here's where most women get tripped up. When they like a man, they unconsciously start doing the pursuing for him. They initiate more, give more, explain more, plan more, and try to keep the connection alive. But when she takes over the pursuit, she unknowingly removes the very process through which a man bonds. He no longer has to invest. He no longer has to choose. He no longer has to show up. And without these actions, his emotional attachment stagnates or fades. Men bond through action. Women bond through emotional exchange. This difference creates the exact dynamic that makes the pursuit principle so essential. A man needs to feel like he is moving towards something valuable, rather than having it handed to him effortlessly. When a woman allows space, without withdrawing love, attitude, or warmth, she creates the conditions in which a man can lean in, initiate, and contribute in a way that builds deeper commitment. The important nuance is this: allowing pursuit isn't about playing games or withholding affection. It's about staying in your center and letting him step into his. When he reaches out, he's not just seeking connection, he's confirming to himself that he wants it. When he plans, shows effort, or makes space for you in his life, he's reinforcing the emotional value you hold for him. Men don't bond because someone is always available. They bond because they made the choice to show up. They bond because they feel proud of the role they're playing. And they bond because through pursuit, they see themselves as an active part of the story, rather than a passive recipient of someone else's effort. The pursuit principle works because it aligns with how men naturally build love, through intention, effort, and the freedom to move toward what they truly want. The biggest transformation in your love life happens the moment you shift from chasing to attracting. Chasing is rooted in fear. Fear of losing him, fear of being replaced, fear of not being enough. It pushes you into overthinking, over-explaining, over-giving, and over-investing. It makes you monitor his effort instead of embodying your own value. And the more you chase, the more a man subconsciously feels he doesn't need to do anything to keep you. You compensate for the gap, and he settles into the comfort of your effort instead of rising into his. Attracting, on the other hand, is rooted in self-trust. It's not passive, and it's not indifferent. It's a deep inner confidence that says, I don't need to convince anyone of my worth. When you're in an attracting mindset, your energy naturally shifts. You stop trying to create connection, and instead create space. The kind of space that lets a man step toward you willingly. Not because you pressured him, but because he felt compelled to. The mindset shift is subtle, but life-changing. Chasing focuses on him. Attracting focuses on you. When you're chasing, your emotional world revolves around his texts, his attention, his timing. But when you're attracting, your world expands. You prioritize your joy, your peace, your boundaries, your presence. You become the woman whose life is full, not because of a man, but because she fills it herself. This shift also changes how men perceive you. A man can instantly sense when a woman's value is self-generated versus dependent on his validation. When she's chasing, he feels pressure. When she's attracting, he feels possibility. One drains his masculine energy, the other activates it. Men move toward what feels emotionally safe and energetically expansive, and a woman who is centered within herself is both. And here's the truth that most women don't realize until much later. When you stop chasing, you don't lose men. You lose the ones who are only staying because you are doing the emotional labor for them. The right man isn't intimidated by your self-worth. He's drawn to it. Because a woman who attracts, rather than chases, is a woman he can respect, pursue, and ultimately commit to. Staying in your power, no matter what a man does, is one of the most liberating and transformative shifts you can make in dating and relationships. It means you stop letting his moods, his timing, his inconsistencies, or his confusion dictate your emotional state. It's not about being cold, detached, or unbothered. It's about being deeply rooted in yourself so that his behavior doesn't shake your sense of worth. Most women lose their power not because a man hurts them, but because they hand over their emotional control the moment they start caring. They begin monitoring his effort, adjusting their energy to match his, and slipping into self-doubt when he pulls back or acts differently. But staying in your power means refusing to collapse into his actions. It's choosing self-respect before reaction. When a man senses that you stay steady even when he shifts, he feels both safe and challenged in the best way. Safe because you're not exploding, panicking, or chasing. Challenged because your emotional stability signals that he can't manipulate your mood or your decisions, intentionally or unintentionally. You become a woman he takes seriously because your responses come from clarity, not anxiety. The core of this power is emotional independence. You can enjoy his presence without needing it. You can appreciate his effort without relying on it to define your value. You can communicate your desires without fearing his reaction. And because you're grounded, you no longer overextend yourself to keep peace or maintain connection. You don't adjust your standards to accommodate his uncertainty. You don't shrink your needs to avoid conflict. You don't chase clarity he isn't giving. Instead, you allow his actions to reveal who he is. You let his consistency, or lack of it, inform your next step. Staying in your power means you observe without absorbing. You respond without reacting. You hold your center without trying to control the outcome. Ironically, this energy is what draws the right men closer. A man respects a woman who doesn't fall apart when he wavers. He trusts a woman who doesn't weaponize emotion. And he invests in a woman whose self-worth remains intact regardless of what he does. Because that kind of woman isn't looking for a man to complete her, she's looking for one who can meet her. What makes a man truly choose you goes far deeper than chemistry, compatibility, or even love. A man chooses a woman when being with her makes him feel like the best, most grounded version of himself. It's not about perfection, beauty, or effort. It's about the emotional impact you have on him. Men are drawn to women who create a sense of clarity inside them, not confusion. When he feels at peace in your presence, when he feels understood without being judged, and when he feels inspired rather than pressured, something inside him says, "This is where I want to stay." What most women don't realize is that men don't choose with their words. They choose with their actions. A man chooses you when he starts making room for you in his life without being asked. When he thinks about your feelings before making decisions. When he protects the connection instead of risking it. And most importantly, when he consistently shows up because he wants to, not because he feels obligated or afraid of losing you. The emotional ingredient that influences this choice more than anything is how he feels about himself when he's around you. If he feels respected, trusted, and appreciated, he leans in. If he feels criticized, controlled, or constantly evaluated, he pulls back. Men are sensitive to feeling inadequate, even when they don't show it. A woman who allows him to be authentic, not perfect, not flawless, just real, gives him something rare. She gives him emotional safety. But choosing isn't just about comfort. It's also about inspiration. A man chooses a woman who challenges him in a way that feels empowering, not draining. A woman who has standards, boundaries, and a life she loves doesn't force him to rise. She naturally invites him to. Her self-worth sets the tone for the entire relationship, and he responds to that by wanting to be better, do better, and offer more. In the end, a man chooses you, not because you chase, please, or perform, but because you embody a combination of calmness, confidence, and emotional depth that makes him feel both steady and alive. He chooses you because the connection feels meaningful. Because you're not trying to control him, you're allowing him to step into his role, and because with you, he sees a future that feels like home. The mindset that ends chasing forever has nothing to do with detaching from men, playing hard to get, or pretending you don't care. It's about realizing that you are not competing for a man, you are filtering. When you truly understand this, everything shifts. You stop viewing men as opportunities you need to win, and instead begin seeing them as experiences that reveal whether they can meet you emotionally, mentally, and energetically. You stop asking, "How do I make him choose me?" and start asking, "Is he even qualified for a woman like me?" That single internal shift ends chasing instantly. Because chasing is born from scarcity. It comes from believing there are limited options, limited love, or limited chances, and that you need to hold on to whatever shows up. But when you know your value, you realize that alignment matters more than attention. This mindset frees you from overthinking his behavior, because you're no longer adjusting yourself to fit into his life. You're observing how he shows up, and whether that aligns with your emotional needs. Instead of proving yourself to him, you let his actions prove his intentions to you. Chasing dissolves when you stop trying to force potential and start responding to reality. You stop investing in excuses. You stop romanticizing the bare minimum. You stop silencing your intuition. You stop shrinking yourself to keep a connection alive. The mindset that ends chasing forever is grounded in self-certainty. It's the understanding that the right man will not need to be convinced, reminded, or pushed into consistency. His interest will be clear. His effort will be visible. His intentions will be felt. You won't be left guessing, analyzing, or negotiating for basic emotional presence. Instead, you'll feel chosen through his actions, not his promises. When you hold this mindset, you naturally become more selective, more confident, and more emotionally calm. You give your energy only to men who show they can reciprocate. You allow men to step forward without interference, and you walk away with grace when they don't. That is the moment chasing dies, because the power shifts back to you. You become the woman who doesn't run after anyone, because the right man will always walk toward her. As we wrap up, here's the most important message. Understanding men psychologically isn't about manipulating them or changing who you are. It's about seeing the truth of how they operate and responding from a place of confidence, clarity, and self-respect. When you understand the patterns, triggers, and natural instincts that guide men's behavior, you no longer get caught in cycles of anxiety, confusion, or chasing. Instead, you step into a space where your energy, boundaries, and presence naturally attract the right men while filtering out the ones who aren't aligned with your value. The next step is simple but transformative. Start applying what you've learned immediately. Observe the men in your life without projecting assumptions onto their behavior. Notice when they pull back and when they step forward, and respond intentionally, not emotionally. Lean into your own life, passions, and confidence rather than trying to force connection or earn approval. By prioritizing your self-worth and your emotional stability, you create the magnetic energy that draws men toward you without chasing. This isn't about perfection or playing games. It's about becoming the kind of woman who holds her own center, knows her value, and doesn't allow uncertainty to dictate her happiness. When a man feels that strength, he doesn't just notice it, he respects it. He wants to invest in it. He chooses it willingly because he senses that it's rare, authentic, and unshakable. Finally, remember, the most powerful relationships are built on mutual choice, respect, and emotional alignment. When you understand men psychologically, you don't settle for confusion or inconsistency. You attract clarity, commitment, and love that feels effortless because it's rooted in reality, not chasing. Start embodying these principles today, and watch how your relationships and your confidence transform in ways you never thought possible. You are no longer chasing, you are choosing, you are attracting, and that changes everything.